For thousands of years, the territory of modern Russia and Ukraine functioned as an exposed ocean of grass. The lack of natural borders left early inhabitants, like the Scythians, at the mercy of this landscape. They left no written records, only these massive burial mounds, called kurgans. Slavic tribes later settled the same region, but without mountains or oceans to protect them, they remained divided and vulnerable to constant raids from nomadic warriors. Legend says the East Slavs eventually invited a Viking chief named Rurik to rule over them, seeking a foreign warlord to unify the tribes and establish order. This first unified state emerged as a strategic necessity, designed to plug the geographic vulnerability of the open plains. Rurik's successors expanded this authority, moving the capital to Kiev and establishing a powerful new state known as Kievan Rus. Seeking stronger ties with the wealthy Byzantine Empire to the south, Vladimir the Great adopted their religion, converting the state to Orthodox Christianity. Under Yaroslav the Wise, the state reached a golden age. He codified laws and conquered new lands, turning Kievan Rus into one of the most sophisticated powers in Europe. However, the state lacked a stable transition of power. After Yaroslav's death, his sons fought for control, and the unified kingdom shattered into a patchwork of feuding princedoms. Kievan Rus disintegrated into internal conflict just as a massive, unified threat emerged from the east. On an open landscape, political division invited total collapse. Led by Batu Khan, a gigantic Mongol army swept relentlessly across the open steppe with overwhelming speed and force. The fractured Russian princes were unable to coordinate a defense. Cities burned, people were slaughtered, and the original state of Kievan Rus was effectively erased. The survivors were absorbed into the Golden Horde. For 2 centuries, the Russian princes lived as vassals under what they called the Tatar Yoke. To avoid devastating reprisal raids, the princes were forced to travel to the Mongol capital at Sarai to pay tribute and demonstrate their submission. The Mongol occupation demonstrated that survival in this environment favored an absolute, highly centralized authority. Moscow emerged as the center of this new authority, aggressively consolidating power over neighboring territories. The Grand Princes of Moscow eventually challenged their oppressors, winning a major victory at Kulikovo Field and later forcing a final Mongol retreat at the Ugar River. After the fall of Constantinople, Moscow claimed the mantle of the Third Rome, a fortified seat of the Orthodox faith and a rising imperial power. Moscow expanded its borders by annexing once independent rivals like Novgorod, forging the first unified Russian state. Moscow secured its survival by adopting the methods of its masters, constructing a centralized fortress state. Ivan IV consolidated this survival strategy, becoming the first Tsar of Russia and exercising absolute authority over the state. To protect the interior, Ivan pushed the borders outward, conquering Tatar lands and sending explorers into Siberia to create vast territorial buffer zones. This expansion was spearheaded by Cossacks, skilled horsemen who lived on the lawless steppe and served as mercenaries for the Russian state. Despite these gains, the land remained porous. In 1571, raiders from the Crimean Khanate bypassed the frontier and burned Moscow itself. This continued vulnerability coincided with a shift in Ivan's rule. His early reforms gave way to a reign of terror and mass executions, fueled by his violent paranoia. The brutal methods used to manage this vast exposed territory left a legacy reflected in his title, Ivan the Terrible. This internal violence eventually turned inward. In a fit of rage, Ivan killed his own son and heir with the royal scepter. When Ivan's childless son Fyodor died years later, the 700-year-old Rurikid dynasty ended, leaving the centralized state without a clear successor. Without a strong central ruler, Russia slid into the time of troubles, a period of total anarchy, famine, and civil war. Foreign powers immediately took advantage of the chaos. Polish troops occupied Moscow, and Swedish forces seized Novgorod. The open geography favored a central autocrat to prevent extinction, but the pressure of maintaining that grip frequently threatened